So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us for the sixth QAF lunch hour. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Britta Zavada. I'm the director that is charged with implementing the quality assurance framework at the CHE. And these lunch hours are meant to present the QAF and aspects of the QAF in smaller bite-sized chunks for you to work with and for us to engage on. The reason why I thought I should start is because I am actually in Cape Town at the moment at the Higher Education Quality Assurance Forum, QAF, which is a conference organized jointly by CPUT and UNISA on quality assurance. And there are about 120 people at this conference, and they are running late. So I thought quite a few of the people who registered and who would have joined us are still sitting in the venue. They are also going to stream the QAF lunch hour in the actual venues. So people might have registered, but they're actually going to watch in the main venue. So I'm going to start, and just to welcome everybody and say thank you for joining us. And we'll see how it goes. And yeah, so I will be using Mentimeter again. For those of you who know, I use Mentimeter as a way of engaging because it is very difficult to have a conversation with 111 people in the room. So you can either open it so long on a second screen, mentimeter.com, and then you will see when the questions start coming up. So I'm going to project the presentation now. Can I just check again that you can see the presentation?
Yes, Britta.
Okay, thank you. So you will see that it says IQA functionality revisited, because I did speak in the very first QAF lunch hour number 1. I did speak about IQA functionality, internal quality assurance functionality, and I just want to unpack it a bit more. The reason why it's necessary to unpack it a bit more is that the HEQC has had a task team to work on this concept. And this task team has developed a number of principles as well as the process for determining IQA functionality. And that is what I'm going to share with you now. And this is from the September HEQC meeting. So it is brand new and hot off the press. So really interesting and exciting, and we're really making progress now going forward. So just to remind you that I use menti.com, and I'll give you the code just now, but what I'm going to do is share some principles with you and then ask basically, is it clear? If it's not clear, tell me what is not clear and do you agree? And then at the end, I will ask some other kinds of questions around it. So just to basically look at IQA functionality, internal quality assurance functionality, as a basis for differentiation in the QAF, then to just look again at the implications of IQA functionality and the different levels. I will show you some examples of the QA dashboards. It is with dummy data, so please not to take these too seriously, but it's just to show you what the QA dashboards will look like, and then to share those principles and processes that the HEQC has now decided on for deciding IQA functionality with you. So just to remind you that these are the principles of the new quality assurance framework. The first one, and really the bedrock of the QAF, is that it is the institution's responsibility, and they are accountable for their internal quality assurance system. As I always say, this has always been the case in the last 25, 26 years or so of quality assurance in South Africa. But somehow it has shifted as if the CHE is responsible for quality assurance. And we just need to re-establish that principle. which is enshrined in the Higher Education Act, that institutions themselves are responsible and accountable for their quality and for their internal quality assurance systems. The QAF then also seeks to integrate, basically integrate its processes, but especially in terms of what we are talking about today, is to get this integrated, holistic view of an institution. At the moment, the CHE, and in the past, the CHE has worked in really siloed ways, and we are really trying to get that information about an institution into one place so that we can get this picture of what an institution is doing and how an institution is functioning. And so this concept of IQA functionality is really that concept that brings everything together. Then the fitness of purpose and the fitness for purpose is really of the institution itself. Is its purpose fit? Does it have a fit purpose through its vision and mission and its identity and agency? And then is it designed for that purpose? So not really directly related, but it also speaks to the internal quality assurance in the institution. Is it fit for purpose? Does it actually achieve its goal effectively and efficiently? And then the principle of differentiation, really, really important for this conversation around IQA functionality, because we are going to use this concept of IQA functionality to differentiate between institutions. And you will see how that will be done. We've talked about this for some time, and hopefully that will also then simplify our processes. Collaboration, not so evident in this discussion today, but really also innovation, doing things differently, trying new ideas on how to be more effective and efficient and really achieve our purposes more of quality assurance more meaningfully going forward. So just to speak briefly to IQA functionality as a basis for differentiated external quality assurance. So just to remind you, internal quality assurance is what you should be doing in the institution. It's how your quality management system is organized and how you make sure that the quality and quality assurance within your institution is functioning. External quality assurance, on the other hand, is what the CHE is doing. And those two things should really be aligned and should be in sync, so to speak. So just to re-emphasize that institutions are responsible for their own quality and quality assurance, and then that the IQA functionality of an institution will be based on a track record over time. So how well you are doing over time in terms of external quality assurance activities. This will be measured against a number of standards. So the higher education practice standards will be like the framework that we use, and everything you do will be measured against those standards. And so you will be able to see your IQA functionality for each one of the standards on the dashboards, as well as the qualification standards. So this track record is how your peers have judged you and evaluated you through external quality assurance activities. So the activities are accreditation, and then the different quality reviews, for example, institutional quality reviews or audits, themed reviews or qualification reviews. So what goes into the quality assurance dashboard is known by you before it goes into the dashboards. And I think this is a very important point, and I'll keep re-emphasizing it. There will be no information in that dashboard that you haven't already seen and have had the opportunity to engage with. For example, during all our quality review processes, you do have the opportunity to look at the draft reports and to respond to them. So by the time the HEQC makes a final decision, you would have seen those outcomes, you would have seen those recommendations. So the dashboards and the management information system will really support us in just bringing all those outcomes together in one place. So the IQA functionality will not be a quantitative or a numerical enumeration of outcomes. It won't be like an algorithm. It'll be we look at the dashboard, which brings all your outcomes together in one place. But the HEQC subcommittee will look at the dashboard, look at the reports, and actually engage with that before they make a final recommendation. So it is your peers who then look at your track record over time and who then come to an overall conclusion around your IQA functionality. This outcome of your IQA functionality will then determine how the CHE works with you in a differentiated manner. So in addition to the kind of differentiation that we know already in terms of size, in terms of context, identity, history, and so on, we will add this different element now about IQA functionality. So we will have focused capacity development for institutions that need it, and focus on them that really require support, rather than focusing on the entire sector and on institutions that don't need that kind of support. There will be differentiated review cycles between 8 and 5 years, and I'll show you just now. And institutions which are functional or highly functional will have what we call program approval status. But then we have to keep the accountability as well. So the potential does exist for the withdrawal of accreditation as well. So just a visual picture of what I've just said. So the QAF seeks to support and enable institutions to move up the ladders, so to speak, so that they can be at okay, I say now at levels 3 and 4, but it's actually on the top level, on the green levels, functional or highly functional. At the bottom end, as we've said, these are institutions which are completely not functional, and the CHE will keep that accountability of removing accreditation from institutions which are not functional. And then moving up the ladder to highly functional. So if an institution has limited functionality, there are serious questions about its continuous sustainability. There will be a limited window of opportunity for intense capacity development and rapid improvement. The CHE will engage intensely with that institution within the 5-year registration window. We decided to keep it at 5 years to actually allow for the improvements to happen. But that institution will not be able to do new accreditation submissions until they have moved to partly functional. We want to avoid the situation where institutions have students, they are students, but then they don't service the students they have already, but then they want to now create new programs, get more students. So it's really to make sure that the institutions service the students that they have properly before they move into new areas. Then partly functional, there will also be focused capacity development in specific areas which have been identified. Then there will also be ongoing engagement with the CHE, also a 5-year institutional review. And these institutions may do new accreditation applications, but only in the fields in which they are already operating. The reason for that is that part of the improvement may actually be to have revise a program with more than 50%. So the institution will be able to do new accreditation applications, but only for the programs they already have, to replace the programs to improve what they already have. And then functional institutions may still have some targeted capacity development, but they will be on an 8-year review cycle, and that institution will have program approval status. I'm not going to talk about that so much now, but it will mean that they will have a simplified accreditation process, hopefully with a turnaround time of 3 months. And then highly functional institutions will be on an 8-year cycle, with institutions also having program approval status. But let me just say that even for the institutions that have 8-year review cycles, and you will see now as we go on, is that the IQA functionality will be evaluated annually. So there will be a view on these institutions from the dashboard perspective. So the CHE will have a view of these institutions, but as long as they remain functional and highly functional, we will not interfere with them. But if they slip, their IQA functionality might change to partly functional. So this trend over time will be reviewed annually. So this is the kind of information that has been out there for some time. Just to let you see what a dashboard, this is the overall one for the sector, excuse me, but just really to say this is dummy data. So nothing that you see here is real. It's just really to show you what it looks like. So overall, if you see institutional category type and campus type, so it's literally the entire sector will have a functionality range of 2.3 out of a possible 4. And then it's based on 6 quality reviews and 5 accreditations. On the right-hand side is how the levels are spread. Then it's per institution. That might not be possible if we have the whole sector. Important here is the trend analysis to look at the overall trend. And then on the right-hand side, based on the standards, which standards have a higher functionality and which standards are the ones that are causing problems. So this is an overall dashboard for the sector. But then an institutional dashboard, and you will see Cape Love College, there isn't anything like that. It's really just to show you that based on this dummy data, they have an overall score of 2 out of the possible 4. So they are only partly functional, and that's based on 1 quality review and 2 accreditations. And so you can see here also on the standards on the pie graph, for example, so on the blue, the program accreditation, PA1, they get functional, but then on the HEPS one, they only got a 1, and on the institutional audit, 1 and institutional audit 11 standards, they only got 1, which really pulled them down. And sort of also trying to show that institutions have learned how to play the accreditation game, often using consultants to write their accreditation applications. But the actual function of the institution over time and the delivery to the students isn't necessarily what it should be. But just again to say that this is dummy data, it's just to show you how it will work. And you can see the trend there over time with the accreditation outcomes, but then there's only 1, like a dot, for the quality review. So then we now move to what is new. And these are the principles that HEQC decided on. So the institutional audit outcomes will be used as an initial baseline for determining the IQA functionality of institutions. So we have completed all the public universities and have started with the first 20 private institutions. So obviously that information will only become available as institutions go through audits and reviews. And we will add the data to the system as it becomes available. So we will only use limited historical data from accreditation, probably over the last 3 years, transfer the outcomes from the HEQC online to the dashboards, just so that there is something on accreditation as well, and it's not just the audit outcomes. So I just want to confirm that this is clear. So you will see now the Menti.com code You can either scan the QR code with your phone, or you can sign in with 6162-1277. And then the question really, is it clear that we are going to use the institutional audit outcomes as a basis for determining the IQA functionality? TK, whilst colleagues are responding, can you just tell me how many people are in the room so that I can see more or less?
We're at 178, Britta.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I'll give it a bit of time, especially with the first one, because that always takes a little bit longer. Okay, so the next question is going to be what exactly is not clear. So theoretically, there should only be three answers to that in the next question, but maybe you can think about it. The colleagues who answered undecided, you can think about it so that when I move to the next slide, it goes quickly in terms of the responses. What about this principle may not be clear to you? And there are 4 of you now. So technically there should only be 4 answers to the next question. But I don't want to stop anybody who still want clarity on anything. I think I'll just wait till it's around 100. Okay, it seems to have slowed down now. So I'm going to move to the next question, which then is, if it is not clear, what is not clear? If those colleagues you can just type in words or phrases. So I'm getting lots of thumbs up. So obviously people are, the definition of limited accreditation, okay. So, okay, nothing is unclear. So what do we mean by limited? And I'll talk about, okay, I'll talk about the limited. So basically it's going to be about we're going to use the institutional audit outcomes, but we do want to bring something of accreditation into it. So we will use maybe the last 3 years of accreditation outcomes. So if you are accredited without any conditions, it'll go in as highly functional. If you are accredited with just some few not serious conditions, it'll be functional. And then if there are serious pre-commencement, for example, conditions, it'll go in as partly functional. So differentiated EQA. So it's important that you understand that we are not going to differentiate the EQA. It's a differentiated engagement. So for example, if you do institutional reviews, everybody when it's their turn will do the same institutional review. What is differentiated is how we engage with you depending on the outcome. For example, in terms of capacity development, in terms of giving you more less time to actually fix the institution. So it's very important that you understand that the standards will not be differentiated. You will be evaluated against the same standards, and the same processes of EQA will work with you. It's after the outcome what will be differentiated, how we engage with you. Peers deciding IQA. So what happens during an EQA activity is that the peer review panels decide on whether your IQA is functional or not. So, for example, during an institutional review, the peer review panel comes to check if your IQA is functional. So that is what we mean by that. Then somebody is asking about the timeframes for accreditation. And I'm not sure what exactly you mean by that, but the timeframes for accreditation currently are all within 8 months. There are no backlogs on any accreditation applications, but we do hope that in the QAF eventually, with a new system that we are going to develop, that for functional and highly functional institutions will bring that down to 3 months. Yeah, I'm hoping I responded to some of the issues there. So the question is, do you agree with this principle that we should use the institutional review audit outcomes as a baseline to start off? So this is just a basic, I forgot to type in the, oh my goodness. So let's say the blue is yes, option 1 is yes, option 2 is not sure, and option 3 is no. Okay, so more people saying they're not sure if they agree, and I'd be interested to know why. And okay, it seems to have slowed down now. So we'll talk about the why later on. So the second principle is that the weighting of the standards may be desirable, but that should only be implemented after a period of time and with due consultation. So currently the institutional audits have 16 standards, and there was no indication that they might be weighted, some more important than others. So during the pilot of the IQA functionality, the institutional audit standards should be weighted equally. The HEQC will then in the future perhaps look at weighting standards differently, but that is not going to happen now. So all 16 standards, and actually 17 if you add 1 for program accreditation, will be weighted equally. So is this clear? That the 16 audit standards plus 1 for program accreditation will be weighted equally. It's also very important to remember that we sometimes say that they are not weighted. But if you put them in a dashboard where they get collated, they automatically do become weighted, even if it then means that they are equally weighted if you don't give them a weighting. Okay, so this seems clear enough that the standards are weighted equally. Okay, nobody, or there were only 2 responses about that it's not clear. Maybe some indication of what is not clear about them being equally weighted. Very clear, nothing. Okay, there's no responses, and the only response says nothing, so I'm going to move on. Do you agree with this principle? Yes or no, or not sure? Okay, we'll come back to this. Because I see now there are more people who don't agree with this principle, and maybe we can discuss this in the open session. So that HEQC task team then also looked at the idea that we should add additional data to the dashboard to look at IQA functionality. But they came to the conclusion that no additional data will be used, only what is already known. So only known data that you already know based on final HEQC decisions will be used to determine your IQA functionality. So there will be no surprises. It's information that you already have. They looked at possible additional data such as student success, transformation, and so on. But the feeling was also that these are infused into the standards. So because they are infused into the standards, the peer evaluation has already happened on them. So the decision really was to just use the HEQC decisions, the outcomes, as data, no additional data, nothing that you are not aware of. It is only known data that will be used on the dashboard and for the IQA functionality. Is this clear? Oh dear. Okay, I'm sitting in a room with open windows, and the wind has just come up in a really strong way. So whilst people are responding, I'm just going to close the windows. Okay, so this is obviously very clear. Okay, if not, nobody said it's unclear, so I'm going to skip this. Do you agree with this principle? Okay, so most are in agreement. Then the fourth principle is that there should be very clear communication and awareness of IQA functionality, what it means, and how institutions should respond. Obviously, this is quite important for this to work. It's something completely new that we are introducing. And so we really want to make sure that there's clear communication and that everybody is not only aware, but actually understand what it means and how institutions should respond. And I'll talk a little bit about that. So it seems that that's quite clear. I think that's sort of a given that we should communicate clearly and that there should be a good understanding in the system of what IQA functionality and the status means, what the implications are. The words that we used is how does this land in the institution? So it's also very important that you communicate within your institution. So when that outcome letter comes, which says your institution is at IQA functionality at this level, that it's not a surprise, first of all, to people, and that everybody understands what now, what should happen because of this or not happen. Okay, so they no not sures. So do you agree with this principle? Okay, also agreement. I think that's fairly straightforward. Okay, this one is a little bit more complex, and so I'm going to spend a bit of time on it. So just like with the institutional audit outcomes, the IQA functionality will remain confidential between the CHE and the institution. We are putting the institutional audit executive summaries of the reports on the website. That is part of the public accountability of the CHE, but we are not putting the outcome levels. It's just the recommendations and the commendations. It doesn't say you're at level this or level that. So that remains confidential between the CHE and the institution. We do, however, have to communicate with DHET and SAQA about certain things. For example, the registration cycle for your qualifications will depend on your functionality, IQA functionality status. And so, for example, functional institutions qualifications will be re-registered for 8 years, whereas if you're only partly functional, your qualifications will only be re-registered for 5 years going forward. And then for DHET, then obviously for the private institutions, it is one of the elements that feeds into your registration with DHET. Only generic information will be shared publicly. So the dashboard per institution will not be shared, but the sector information may be shared. But the idea then is also the idea that there is what we call a critical compact between the institution and the CHE. That the institutions will not use their dashboards and their IQA functionality in a way that promotes ranking or marketing. There should be a kind of quid pro quo in the sense that if you are not doing so well, we're not going to broadcast it. But then if you are doing well, that's also not, it shouldn't create this ranking. We're really trying to avoid ranking between institutions. and not to create this competitiveness between institutions, and then also not for marketing purposes. So this is a little bit more complex, so I'm going to see how you respond. Is this principle clear? So from our side, we will keep it confidential, but then from your side, we are also expecting you not to sort of misuse it to promote ranking and a kind of competitiveness. Okay, so there are 4 not sures. If you are not clear, what about it is not clear? So there should be at least 4 answers here. Ratings versus rankings. So if you rate institutions on a scale of 1 to 5, say for example, and you put that in the public space, it'll only be a matter of time before some journalist actually collates all of that and creates a ranking out of it. So if one institution A has all 17 of their standards at level at highly functional, and another institution has all theirs at partly functional, then obviously the one is ranked higher than the other one. The why, we don't want to have that kind of competitiveness in the sector, and the CHE has always taken this approach of not ranking institutions. Since the beginning of the CHE and the HEQC, it's not about ranking. It is about making sure that there's quality education within the context of that institution. And if not, that we first go into a kind of developmental supportive role with that institution, trying to make sure that the institution does actually provide quality education. So there aren't enough higher education spaces in the country as it is. So and there is already a lot of competition. So we don't want to add to that competition. I do understand that the private institutions might want to use that as a marketing tool, but the HEQC has decided that it shouldn't be like that. It will become obvious to the students, but this is something that can be discussed, because if you then do use it as a marketing tool, it will then become that kind of competitiveness and so on, which I suppose is what you want as private institutions, but the HEQC does not want to play into that space. Where is it stated by the CHE that it's, for example, it is in the framework for the institutional audits, that the outcomes of the audits are not to be used for ranking. Benchmarking, if by benchmarking you mean just looking at what other institutions are doing, yes, that it'll be possible in the sense that we would be able to create sort of anonymized versions of the dashboards, and those we will publicize. For example, we can look at all the universities of technology and say this is how they are doing. And because you know how you are doing, you will be able to see how you do in relation to that sector. Or we can we can ask the dashboard to show all the private institutions, and then if you see all the private institutions are highly functional, just as an example, but you only functional, then you will see that you are not actually doing as well. So that kind of almost indirect benchmarking will be possible. You will also be able to look at specific standards and areas in which institutions will be against the practice standards. So we will be doing the benchmarking for you, but it won't be possible to, like if you're in institution A, you will not be able to go and look at institution B unless they actually choose to share that with you. There might be that as well. Okay, do you agree with this principle? And just remember now, it's got both sides to it, because it's about whether we treat your information as confidential as well. So if you say no, it means that you actually say, okay, I want to use my institution's information for marketing, but that means the CHE can also publicize my information. And obviously we won't do it just per institution. It will be per, it'll be one decision that works for everybody. Okay, only one person not agreeing. I'm actually surprised. Okay, then the next principle is that in the first iteration, it'll be a pilot, basically, and we will test the system. It's very important that you understand that it's the system of the dashboards that will be piloted, and not the concept of IQA functionality. So you can't contest your outcome, because remember, those outcomes are based on already made final HEQC decisions. So there's nothing to contest in the outcome, so to speak. So the pilot will be a pilot of the process and of the system, so to speak. Is it clear? TK, how many people did you say are in the room? And there are only like 50 something responding.
We are now at 190.
And only about 60 are responding.
Yeah, the numbers have been roughly around that. I was hoping that they were gonna go past 150.
Okay,
And I
so
did share the link and the quote on the chat.
okay. So that's quite clear then. So nobody said it's not clear, so I'm just going to skip this one. Do you agree with this, that we should pilot the system first? So a few more people, like 5 more people are responding now. Thank you for that. But obviously it's quite clear that there's agreement. So one of the principles here, and I think this one is quite important, is that this process and the outcomes should not create additional work for institutions. The process and outcomes should be linked to already existing processes. So the first part is that this will not create more work for you. The idea is if you are functional or highly functional, it will make your work less. But if you are not functional or highly functional, The process and the outcomes will be linked to already existing improvement plans and the recommendations which have already been decided on by the HEQC. So the idea would be to support institutions to move from one level to another. So I think the basic principle really is that it shouldn't create extra work for functional and highly functional institutions. Actually, it will be less work, but for the institutions that are partly functional or not functional, there will be work to be done, obviously, but it'll be linked to an already existing process, namely that of improvement plans. So is this clear? Okay, but mostly clear. So in the next question, can the person who said not sure just say why they say it's not clear? This question is really also to help me with crafting the communication. You know, if I can find out, because I can see where this is going. I've worked with the stuff. To me, it seems very clear, but it's important for me to understand what to you is not clear. Okay, there was just one person saying not clear. So if they're not sure, they also can't say what's not clear. But do you agree with this principle? So the idea that it shouldn't create additional work, but that it actually just supports the kind of improvement work that it should already be going on in those institutions that aren't only partly functional. So that person who said not sure, do they want more work? Do they want more activities and more work? That's an interesting take on it. Okay, but I want to leave enough time for discussion, so I'm going to move on. So the last principle, I think, is that institutions which are not already functional or highly functional, so you need to read this correctly. It is not functional, but the ones that are at the two higher levels are functional and highly functional. Not those ones, but the ones which are on the lower levels may motivate to be moved from one functionality level to the next once in their IQA functionality cycle of 5 years. If you remember those steps, so the institutions that are in the brown and the orange blocks, which are on cycles of 5 years, they would now be undergoing capacity development, doing improvements, and so on. So once in that 5 years, they may request to be moved up a functionality level. This will also encourage institutions to really take their improvement plans seriously, to really work with the CHE to make those improvements. And then they can move up one level. The functional don't need to move up because they're already on 8 years, and obviously the highly functional also. So it's really for those institutions at the lower level, may motivate to move up, but it'll only be once in that 5-year cycle, and it will have to be motivated. It's very important that that motivation is there, and the motivation also has to be supported by evidence. So is this clear? And the idea is really yeah, just be careful. I think I swapped the options around to make sure you just don't do it automatically. It's really to make sure that institutions can change where they are. So it creates that kind of agency in institutions that they can actually change their functionality status if they do the right things. If they go through the capacity development, if they then do the improvement plans, and the improvement plans can be shown to have been done, and those areas that they were not getting right before are right. Okay, so there's one, how many knows it's behind the QR code, so now I can't see. So what about it is not clear? It makes it during the 5 years, because after 5 years you'll have an institutional review, and then you will get a new IQA functionality status anyway. So it'll be, say, after 2.5, 3 years, if you've done the capacity development and the improvement plans and the well, that task team decided to limit it to once, partly because of capacity from the CHE side, but also that it does take time. It'll take time to do capacity development and to implement improvements, so that it can't be just like a willy-nilly thing. So if you decide, you can do it after a year, but then if you're still not there, then you can't just keep asking to be moved up. We also want to avoid this thing of institutions every year just asking to be moved up a level when in fact they haven't done the work of improving. Do you agree with this principle? So if you're not agreeing, is it because you think it should be every year, or is it because you think there shouldn't be any possibility? We can talk about that in the open session just now. Okay, so it's slowed down a bit. So that this process will lead to the following. For institutions which are not in the green, so to speak, there will be additional and targeted capacity development. And the where required means that it'll be and that's how it'll be differentiated. So if institution A struggles with learning and teaching, we're not going to be doing governance capacity development with them. But if institution B struggles with governance, we're going to be doing governance capacity development with them, not learning and teaching ones. So you can see how it's very targeted and based on the requirements. Then there will be close engagement with institutions on their improvement plans. So remember, it'll be based on your institutional audit or review to a large extent, but then the kind of things that we see will then inform the improvement plans. So it'll also help institutions where they should prioritize energy and resource allocation in terms of the improvement plans. So say, for example, there are now 16 audit standards and you have recommendations in all of them, but which ones will make you move from partly functional to functional? So those kinds of engagements we will have with institutions. Then there will be evaluation of the progress reports. There might be verification of the site visits, and looking at internal quality reviews by institutions. And when institutions then want to move that level of functionality, they will have to apply for it, and they will have to motivate it and support it with evidence. And some of that evidence will be that you have to do your own quality reviews using external peers. So the CHE might not say, we're going to come and do another site visit or come and do another institutional review. You will have to do that yourself, and then look at having external peer reviews as part of that, so that you can use that as evidence to move up, or to motivate your move up the ladder. So the process will be, so I'm finished with the principles now, and just to briefly speak to the process, there will be a transitional period before we fully implement it. We will start this during April 2025, and the reason for that is that the HEQC subcommittee structure will change together with the organizational structure of the CHE on the 1st of April of 2025. So that HEQC subcommittee that has to do this work will only start its work in April 2025, and the directorate that has to do the work. As we said, it'll be based on the current institutional audit outcomes, and there will be one standard for program accreditation. And this will be until the HEPs are approved, and then they will replace the audit outcomes on the dashboard system. The IQA functionality will be reviewed annually. We do say subject to resources, but remember that once the system is in place, the data will be added continuously. So for example, in 2025, we will start with the audit outcomes plus one standard for program accreditation, but then the themed review for the modes of provision outcomes will be added to that. Then your accreditation outcomes during 2025 will be added to that. And then as we just go into the Bachelor of Education qualification review, those outcomes will be added. So you can see how it's going to build up over time, and it'll change as all of those. And that's why these outcomes will add during the year to your outcomes on the dashboard, but the IQA functionality will only be looked at once a year. And the way we're going to do that, so there are 26 public universities and about more than 130 private institutions. That HEQC committee will sit 4 times a year. So we're going to divide, well, it'll start with the public institutions because we've got their audit outcomes. But then we will divide those over the 4 meetings. So say, for example, you start with the April HEQC. Then every year at the April HEQC, your IQA functionality level will be supported, will be reviewed. And then say if you fall on the September HEQC, then you will stay on the September HEQC for this. So the HEQC will consider the dashboards, including the trend in the last year and including any motivation that you may have done. And then that final HEQC decision is communicated to the institution, but also to SAQA for the re-registration of your qualifications, and to DHET as well. So do you have any questions on the process for deciding on IQA functionality? This is an open-ended question, so you can just type in your question. Okay, I'll start with, is the manual for institutional audit still valid for this review process? For now, the framework and the manual for institutional audits remain in place. We are busy working on a new quality review manual, but that will be communicated. So for now, you're still working with the 2021 document. What will we need to submit? You don't have to submit anything for the annual review. It'll be an automatic process from the CHE side. The time frame for the institutional audits it's based on your registration date. There is a QAF lunch hour, I think it was number 3, that specifically looked at this in terms of the time frames. These are available on the YouTube channel, so just go and look at it. It's called the transition from institutional audits to institutional reviews for private institutions. And then what does one standard for program accreditation mean? So in addition to the 16 audit standards, we will have one standard, which just for now says program accreditation, until the new higher education practice standards come into play. And it'll literally just say for that standard, you have either you're accredited or not accredited, and then look at the conditions. If they are serious conditions, it'll be partly functional. If there are not serious conditions, it'll be functional, and if it's just accredited, it'll be highly functional. So it's just an interim thing, just so that we have some accreditation data. Does the CHE have capacity to support institutions and close engagement? Yes, the CHE will make that capacity available to institutions, but there will be a partial cost recovery model. So that part will come into it because obviously there's cost involved. It'll depend whether it's online or we have to travel, that sort of thing. So the cost recovery or the partial cost recovery will come into it, but obviously we will have to make that capacity available. Yes, the dashboards will be updated timeously. Remember, we'll have a year, but it'll be eventually in the management information system, it'll be automatic. As soon as the HQC makes a decision, somebody will literally put the decision in the system immediately. Yes, the supplementary guide for private institutions is still valid until we move to the QAF reviews. So when will the private institutions be notified of their audit dates? Your audit date is related to your registration date with DHET. So we are working through them at about 20 per year. You can contact me if you want to. If TK, if you can just put my email address in the chat, please, if you want to find out. But it's basically, if you look at your registration date on your DHET registration certificate, it's linked to that, because remember, it replaces what previously would have been your reaccreditation. We've already started with the public institutions. We've done that, and we've already started with the private institutions, and you will go through the process based on your registration date with DHET. Will the cost recovery model be applicable to both public and private institutions? Yes, we are intending to have the same partial cost recovery model for both public and private institutions. It might differ in a few details, but the idea is that it'll be much more similar. We've not been informed about reaccreditation. Reaccreditation has been done away with. So there is no reaccreditation. You have to go, the private institutions, instead of reaccreditation for each program, you go through an institutional audit. The whole institution, once off, goes through an institutional audit. So you have to look at the framework and manual for institutional audits, and you will see there how to do it. The institutional audit is not 1 year before the DHET registration date. We're unfortunately not there yet. So we are doing it. Usually we initiate in the same year as your registration date, and then we ask DHET for an extension. Okay, I'm going to move on, and okay, so I'll just quickly look through the chat. Okay, is the manual still valid? I've answered that question. TK has put the link to the transitioning for the private institutions in there. Okay, so we've got about 15 minutes. Are there any questions? No questions. Okay, so I made some notes here. There were quite a few of you who did not agree with this idea of moving up the one application in 5 years to move up a level. Can we maybe discuss that? Who didn't agree with that? Did you not agree that there should be an opportunity to move up, or did you not agree with the only once in 5 years? It's amazing how people mysteriously disappear.
Greta, I responded to that. My name is
Yeah.
Frimpong. I'm from Henley Business School. And I
Yes.
thought there should be some flexibility in the system for people when they are ready to put their hands up for consideration. Limiting it to once in 5 years. 5 years is a very long time, I think. And they have to stay on that level for 5 years with only one opportunity to upgrade. I think it's very limiting.
Okay. I think it was, maybe if I can explain why that was decided. So I understand that you have that concern, and I will take it up. I will convey that concern, and maybe we can look at it, and maybe just rephrase it a little bit differently. But the idea there was really to, first of all, avoid institutions just to apply. We're just applying every year, just to see if we get better peer. We get a chance, right? And so it was to avoid that. But then it was also the idea of it actually takes time to do the improvements and to actually show that they are working, because it's not just a matter of jumping through a few hoops. You have to show that actually makes a difference. And I actually don't think, say, 2 years is a long time. And then you also have to collect the evidence. Yes, Samantha, that's why we have the opportunity in a shorter period than 5 years, but not every year. And then finally, it is basically a capacity issue then, because it means we as the CHE have to verify this, and it will involve then human resources, for example, and other kinds of resources. So I will look at that and maybe discuss. We can discuss and see if we can say maybe under some circumstances institutions could apply again. It's not in 5 to 7 years. It's literally once in 5 years. But the idea is, Haneli, that these are institutions that are not doing well. So we need to make sure that they have improved. And so to make that available willy-nilly and to not make sure that they actually have improved. is really important. But yeah, I think we will look at it and see if we can maybe phrase it to allow for exceptions maybe. Will the dashboard have a communication functionality to speed up the process? I'm not sure if what you mean by that, because the dashboard will not be equivalent to the IQA functionality. Remember, we said that it'll only happen by people. It's not an algorithm that can just be communicated to institutions. It has to go through that HEQC subcommittee and through the HEQC. But the dashboard does have a communication functionality, so you can see your dashboard anytime, but the IQA functionality will only be updated once a year. And that's also a capacity, with 150 plus institutions, that, these staff involved, the committee has to sit, because we thought that you would not want an algorithm. We do not want just an algorithm to make that decision. We want to review it and really look at it properly. Yeah, so I will look at it and see how we can maybe phrase it to, even if we do just allow for exceptions, for example, if something has happened. But I think it is, you must also understand that we have the whole Educor, Lyceum, City Varsity, Damelin situation to deal with.
vele lento eyishoyo Projeri kumele wenze njalo wena uthule ungene
TK?
imali yakho le clock.
Hi,
Mr.
Brita, I'm trying to
Cele?
check who's unmuted.
It's
Eyi, la mali ngiyanawo,
Nhlakanipho Cele.
hayi inkinga.
Oh wait,
Done.
I've done it. So I think institutions must also understand that we do have that responsibility to make sure that institutions are where they are supposed to be. So it's not just about accommodating everybody, it's also about making sure that the students are protected. Okay, the other note I made, some of you did not agree with the equal weighting, about 6 or 7 of you. 7 were not sure and 6 didn't agree. Can we, yeah, Liz, I agree, consistency is important. Can we talk about why you didn't agree with the weighting or the equally weighted? Okay, so maybe all of those 13 people are amongst those that have left. And then some people said that they're not sure about the institutional audits as the baseline. If some of the people who voted not sure there, can you maybe say why you weren't sure? Okay, no response. So the Mentimeter does actually allow people who don't want to make a voice, let their voices come out to participate. Okay, colleagues, can I just check, are there any questions, any reflections, maybe any comments, feedback? I see, Haneli, that you say you've understood and you respect that part of it. Liz says consistency is important. Okay, colleagues, if there are no more questions, thank you very much for your time. I hope this was useful and that it gives a better understanding of where we are moving with this. And we will see you next month for number 7 of the QAF lunch hours. So if you do want to look at relook at the recording, they will be on our YouTube channel. TK has shared the YouTube channel. There, somebody had their hand up and now they've taken it down. Emmanuel, oh, you wanted to clap. Okay. I'm assuming, Emmanuel, that you wanted to clap. Okay, then there's quite a few thank yous. It is my pleasure. And then Francel, thank you. We appreciate the sessions. Thank you. Thank you to TK for always being there to support with logistics, and for Collins. And we appreciate your attendance. We always find that there are so many people coming here, so it's really worth our while to spend this hour and a half with you. So thank you very much, colleagues, and goodbye.